This animal is dangerous. Screams for bloodlust.
How fucking strange. Vampire deer. Deer with fangs.
This is some jackalope thing.
No, it's
Okay.
not. It's a weird little animal. Sexual selection.
And merciless gallop.
뭐가 달려듭니다. 뭐야? 고라니. 아이고.
Sorry, I'm just kidding. Actually, this animal is endangered. This beautiful creature is a water deer. It has fangs instead of horns or antlers. The water deer is on the IUCN Red List. It is in the same vulnerable categories as lions, African elephants, and giraffe. The main habitats of water deer are China and Korea. The population in China is now over 10,000, having risen from around 3,000 as a result of restoration efforts. However, in South Korea, 150,000 of these animals are hunted each year. Over 90% of the world's water deer are in South Korea. Why are Koreans killing a global endangered animal? Why is it only in China and Korea? Why are there so many in Korea? Is it even endangered really? Does it not exist in North Korea? Why is this deer a good swimmer? Why do they only have fangs instead of antlers? This video isn't just about animals. It's about struggle between humans and animals. The simplest way to understand a complex story is to start at the beginning. The first deer appeared in Africa 30 million years ago. They were as small as rabbits, and somehow they left their home and began a long journey. Some settled in what is now India and Southeast Asia. They had to move quickly through the rainforest to avoid predators like leopard, and probably kept their small size. Their descendants are the mouse deer. What happened to the ones who went up north? To survive in the cold forest, they grew larger and developed hooves. It was hard to find a mate in the mountains, so they used smell to communicate. Their descendants are musk deer. What about the French who moved further to the side? They are today's main characters, the water deer. Just 10,000 years ago, during the last ice age, the Yellow Sea between China and Korea was land. The water deer kept their home as this area became a sea. That's why the water deer live only in this area between China and Korea. It's mountainous area with lots of rivers. Water deer like border area where flatland mountains and rivers meet. That's why they are good swimmers. They are slender, weigh about 15 kilograms. The water deer is close to the primitive species of deer, such as the mouse deer and the musk deer. They have no antlers to hide in the reed. Instead, the males compete for mates with their developed fangs. How did they become endangered? It's a pretty obvious story. Habitat loss, poaching, the usual suspects. The important thing is, how can there be 800,000 water deer in Korea when there are only 10,000 in China? Wait, why there are water deer in England? In 1873, a zoo in London brought in the first water deer for exhibition purposes. Later, more were imported for hunting. The water deer didn't have a choice. They just had to live. About 3,000 of their descendants live in England today. It's not also their choice that there are so many water deers in South Korea. In 1982, there were 1.8 water deer per square kilometer in South Korea. By 2011, that number had jumped to 7.2 and now 8.2. That's twice the human population density of Canada. What happened in the meantime? Two-thirds of Korean peninsula is mountainous. During the Japanese occupation and the Korean War, most of the mountains were stripped of their trees. Despite this, South Korea started a national forest regeneration program in the 1960s. This is Park Chung-hee, former president of South Korea. People still debate his legacy even though he died 45 years ago. Even his haters often give positive reviews of his forest restoration projects. A UN report says South Korea has the highest growth in forest resources over the past 35 years in the world, ahead of countries like Poland, Denmark, and the United Kingdom. Everywhere you look in South Korea, you see beautiful mountains and clean river. The problem is that water deer are overpopulating. Water deer live about 10 years. They mate in the winter, starting in November. A mother deer gives birth to 2 to 5 cubs 6 months later. Afterwards, the baby deer can walk 100 meters in an hour. A baby born in May grew to 80% of their adult size in 6 months. By next November, they'll be ready to mate. A study found that water deer populations grow 26% in a year. In 7 years, that's 5 times as much. Water deer's tremendous fertility is a result of their adaptation. These waterways are rich in food, but not safe. After giving birth to as many cubs as possible, a mother hides them in bushes to protect them from predators. Baby cubs born in May will face a brutal summer. South Korea gets 60% of its rainfall in the summer. Many fawns are swept away by swollen rivers. Only the genes that produce more and faster fawns would survive. In nature, their population were balanced by predators and competitors. By the 20th century, the water deer's top predator included tigers, leopards, lynxes, wolves, and foxes, had all become extinct in Korea. The number of water deer exploded, and eventually, they came down to human village in search of food. Friction between human and animals became more and more severe. Human societies began to treat water deer as a troublemaker. But here's the question. Why didn't water deer leave narrow South Korea and head for North Korea and China? There's an imaginary line between South Korea and North Korea that's about 248 kilometers long. Both countries have built parallel fences 1.5 kilometers away from this line. The military demarcation line is a concept that only makes sense to humans, but the fence created by this line has physically kept water deer out. If this were an island, they would swim away anyway. What happened to the water deer that used to live in North Korea? It's hard to know for sure because North Korea is closed, but water deer are thought to be endangered there. Perhaps a few remain in the demilitarized zone or in some protected areas. The water deer is an official endangered species in North Korea and official harmful species in South. Until the 1970s, the water deer population in North Korea was probably the same as in the South. But things changed in the 1990s. As people's lives changed, so did the fate of the water deer. By this time, North Korea's socialist planned economy had totally collapsed. Many people died and suffered in a long famine. People who couldn't fill their stomachs with the regime's rations went to the mountains and cut down trees. There was no reason not to do. The wood was used for fuel and the forests became fields. Look at this graph. In 40 years, North Korea has lost more than 30% of their forests. Since Kim Jong-un took power, he has made forest regeneration a national priority. But it's not enough. Even from satellite images, the mountains in North Korea look different from those in South Korea. North Korea has turned every available area into fields. This place was once home to water deer. A mountain has been gradually carved by humans and eventually took revenge on them. Mountains without trees are vulnerable to summer rain in Korea. Originally, the trees were supposed to hold the water, but instead, the soil was washed away, causing landslides. North Korea floods every summer. Last summer's flood in North Korea killed more than 3,000 people. Humans were at fault, but the water deer had to share the punishment. How could water deer survive in a place so harsh even for humans? So, is South Korea a paradise for water deer? No massive flood and no predators? The water deer is Korean for Gorani. If you want to insult your Korean friend, try calling Gorani. It will work. Water deer are listed as a harmful species in the South Korea. Hunting with firearms is legally allowed. In 2020, 215,000 water deer were killed by bullets in the country. Water deer love tender buds. This is the problem. If they ate the grown harvest, it wouldn't be a big trouble. They're only 15 kilograms. But water deer just eat the new buds of every crop. Crops that lose all their buds don't grow anymore. Farmers see them as little evil demons. But I looked closer and found something strange. In 2018, 170,000 water deer were killed. Local governments paid hunters about $20 for each deer. Total payments were close to $3.7 million. However, damages caused by water deer reported to the government during the same period were $1.9 million, about half the amount of the bounty. This is enough money to cover farmers' losses and to make investments to prevent further damage. In addition, for water deer hunting to be justified, the number of reported damages should decrease in the year of high capture and the following year. However, the changes in the number of water deer killed and the amount of damages are independent. They kill deer without a proper capture plan or analysis. Why does the South Korean government antagonize water deer? South Korea's remarkable growth has been in cities and industrial zones, leaving the countryside behind. Rural incomes are falling behind urban ones, and they're getting older. The government can't ignore their complaints. Placing a bounty on the water deer would be easier than create rural promotion policy. It would also create a job for catchers.
나왔다.
Not only bullets, but they are also killed by cars. Over 50,000 water deer are killed by cars each year. What if water deer live in Den Mountain, wanna come to this river? There's a path for human, but water deer can know. Water deer are also night active. Headlights blinds them. Furthermore, they have an instinct to charge rather than dodge when they encounter a large predator, so they charge into the car. Between hunting and roadkill, more than 200,000 water deer are killed by humans every year. They are not just suffering, they are also fighting back fiercely. Experts say that water deer are having babies more and faster these days. A recent study found that water deer in South Korea have less genetic diversity than Chinese water deer, which have a much smaller number. This means that South Korea's water deer groups are isolated and vulnerable to environmental changes. It's not clear why these results were found, but one thing is for sure though, the huge increase in water deer isn't something to be celebrated. It could be an abnormal phenomenon caused by the extinction of predators and rapid environmental changes. If a new, unexpected epidemic were to strike, this beautiful deer could disappear from this peninsula in an instant. This peninsula used to be one country. It was divided into two. In just 7 years, the brothers have become so different. But they still have something in common. No country for water deer.